All right, welcome in. Appreciate you guys. As always, you are tuning in to the Iowa State Fan Perspective, as always, brought to you by the Play the Fight Song College Football Show, presented by our sponsor, new sponsor. I don't think I've given the sponsor a shout out on this show yet. Our friends at No Rivals Brand. We will talk about them in a little bit here. We got some awesome stuff coming up with them, but let's get to it. We got a ton of stuff to cover since we last talked to you guys. As always, I'm joined by my co-host and my family brother, Justin. How we doing?
Not too
NBA
bad.
fan tonight. Tyrese Halliburton's playing tonight, but us Cyclone football fans need to talk about something else.
Yes, sir. We'll see if he doesn't throw the game away tonight.
Yeah, not
That was
great.
that was uncalled for. He played all right the other night, but not the topics we're gonna be talking about today.
Not the topics we are going to be talking about today. Maybe in the future, if this show doesn't work out, maybe we dive into an NBA rabbit hole podcast. We'll see where that goes. But for now, we're going to give this thing a try. Hey guys, we got a lot of recent news to cover. Some uniform stuff, some 2025 recruiting stuff, schedule things that we want to touch on. And then the big topic of tonight that you want to join in for is Justin and I are going to finally be talking some real football things. We are going to be breaking down the Big 12 quarterbacks into tiers. I have 4. He's got 5. We're going to explain the whole thing when we get there. I'm super excited for it. The transfer portal has finally closed, so we know we at least have a decent idea who's going to be the starting quarterback for most of these teams. And I mean, I would say 75% of these teams already have their starter going into the month of June, which is really refreshing because I think some schools right now and some conferences can't really say that. But the Big 12, it's going to be fun this year. All right. That being said, let's get into the news right away so we can get to that. First things first, this is a little outdated. It's been a while since we've kind of touched on it, but I did want to get, Justin, your opinion on it. Iowa State will be on the front and center of week 0 in 2025. They have accepted to play in Ireland against Farmageddon rival Kansas State. First of all, just your initial thoughts on playing in Ireland, being in the week 0 game, and secondly, the opponent who we're going to play, Kansas State.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got two opinions on it. Like just the fact of the game being in Ireland and being a standalone week 0 game, like that's going to be great for us and Kansas State for just straight up publicity. Like you can't ask for a better spotlight than that. That's going to be great for the program. But honestly, when I saw we were playing K-State in week 0, had a couple mixed feelings about it. First of all, just because they're a good team and we know the hiccups that some Matt Campbell teams have had in early season, and why not make it even earlier in week 0? And the fact that I love going to the Farmageddon game and that it's always like that late season game. Like in our cutups here, we've got the snow game with Abu Sama and everything. I just kind of like that being the end of the season, being a rivalry. It's just gonna be kind of weird having that game the first week and then turn around and having the Big 12 start right away and then turn around playing Iowa 2 weeks later. It's like that could be a pretty rough start for us to start the season.
Yeah.
But I think as far as the marketing and the exposure goes for the team, you can't pass that up.
Absolutely not. And I was saying it last year in week 0, they had like 8 games. This year they have 4. And the only one that counts is Florida State and Georgia Tech. The same thing's going to count for next year. Iowa State and Kansas State is going to be the only football game on that Saturday. I think I said that on the podcast when we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Like there's, even when Iowa State, if they were to be in the Big 12 championship or if they were to be in a playoff game, if they won the Big 12 championship, there are multiple football games on that day. This is the only day of the year where NFL doesn't even start yet. Iowa State, Kansas State is going to be the only football game on for the entire country to see. I don't really, I've heard a lot of gripes about it, and I get kind of Kansas State too because they lost their home game. That's upsetting. I understand that, but I think for both sides here, it's an opportunity to be on the biggest stage bright and early. Like you're both 0-0. It's a fresh start. In the new Big 12, this is one of the oldest rivalries in college football. So the tradition is still there. And now we're taking it overseas. I guess my next question would be, have you started like a separate savings account for this yet? Like, are you putting $5 a week away for this?
I mean, as much as I say I would like to, that's going to be a next summer decision, I think.
Okay. That's probably good. You better You better start selling some things. All
See
right.
how the season goes first.
Let's get to the next thing. Again, this is a little bit outdated, but it's been recent since we talked to you guys last. Iowa State is getting new threads for the 2024 season. I don't think this is it. I think they were very limited on what they showed us, and they still have not shown us the mystery uniform that was presented the first day that this all came out. You look at that on Twitter, they put up 3 different pictures of the different combinations, and then there's a question mark on the 4th picture. They still haven't released that uniform. There's speculations at what it would be, but we're almost near in June, and it's been a month since they released these new uniforms. We'll get there when we receive that information. But Justin, initially, what's your thoughts on the new uniforms?
Yeah, I was a little hesitant on the stripes, but I do think it brings at least a little bit of flair to the uniform because they're pretty basic outside of that. But the biggest thing I was excited for is the new red.
Yep.
Just the brighter color feels more Iowa State, feels more like that early 2000s red that we had going on. So I really like that.
Yeah. Do you have a gripe with? There's a lot of people that think the reds are off on the helmet and the jersey. Do you think that, or is that just somebody else's?
Looking at this picture, if you're looking at Rocco there, I mean, it kind of looks like it, but I'm sure when they actually roll the uniforms out, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
If that's the case and they are different reds, it might be kind of a problem, but I don't know.
Couple things to note from their social media posts. They didn't even put it in this one. Yellow pants are back. I'm a fan. I know some people don't love the gold. I do think the yellow pants are going to be good at least 2 or 3 times a year. The stripes on the sleeves, as you touched on, the classic look, that's new this year. I really enjoy that. And the only picture or combination they showed of home uniforms was the red jersey, white top, as you see there. I guess the white helmet on Yedem's wearing the white helmet on the right there, but the red jersey, white pants, the only home combination that they've showed so far. So interested to see if they bring back the red top gold pants, because we know we're getting gold pants. Are we going to get that combination? Are we going to get a red on red? Something to note. I don't know.
I'd love to see a red on red with this.
Yeah, I do.
I'm not
too.
I mean, the red on white looks okay, but
Yep.
I like the red on white when it's got the white helmet. I'm not a huge fan of the red white, but I really like the white jerseys. You could do a lot with the white jerseys with gold pants, red pants, even the whites look good. You do a lot with those.
Really dove into the red jersey, white bottoms. Like that's been their, like when you play the new college football 25 game, that's automatically going to be your preset, your generic home lineup. And that never used to be a thing. I think it's a classic look. I do like it. All right. We can spend all day talking about that, but let's save that for more when we do get that mystery uniform. Let's move on to the next thing. Some good recruiting news. And actually, like, bias aside, yes, he's committed to Iowa State, but from being from the state of Iowa, from kind of where he's located in northern central Iowa, Alex Mansey, the 2025 3-star quarterback from Algona, makes it to the Elite 11 finals. This is a huge deal. He's going to be going against some of the best quarterbacks in all of the high school ranks in that class. And even Juju Lewis, who is the best quarterback in that class right now. Justin, this is pretty much, I don't know, like, this isn't the biggest deal. You don't want to make too much of it, but honestly, just what I took away from it is a kid from the state of Iowa playing. He's 3A, so that's like he's got about 100 in your class. So for a kid who not to make it from the biggest class in the state of Iowa, I think is pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, we knew it was a big commit at the time. Parks and his co-host at Nebraska, they've talked about it. They were high on him, even though they got a 4-star kid who's going to be in that Elite 11. So really, I think Iowa State got somebody who he could be a big name, probably the next shoes to fill once Rocco's gone, but he's got some good competition in Connor Moberly and JJ Cole right now. So Iowa State continues to build up depth in that quarterback room for the future. All right, let's get to some last recruiting news. Like I mentioned before, the transfer portal has officially closed. Iowa State has topped off their roster at 85. They're officially done, and they did it by adding 2 commits within the recent weeks. Let's go with the most recent. Cornerback Ryan Robinson Jr. from LSU just committed last week. Out of high school, he was a 3-star. He doesn't have, I don't think, any snaps really on the defensive side at LSU or any playing experience, some special team stuff, but He was a decent recruit out of high school. He had offers, from Arkansas, Auburn, Nebraska, Colorado, Florida State, and Tennessee. He's a Louisiana kid, and he decided to take his chances and walk on at LSU. That's the great thing about the modern day of college football. He can jump in the portal and go where he's most wanted right now. And he tried his chance at LSU, but I think he's going to fit in really well at Iowa State. And I know that we've talked about before we even get to the next one. Justin, you messaged me as soon as this happened. And I think last time we met, if there's one portal need that we had to get, it was cornerback. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're pretty excited about this.
Yeah, I know that's what I said on our last pod back after the spring game. The number one need that we hadn't addressed yet in the portal was secondary. And I know this guy is pretty unproven, and it's not like I'm expecting this guy to come in and get Big 12 honors or even start right away. But having depth at that position after seeing us like go down with injuries, like just asking for depth at that is great for us.
I think even if he's the fourth or fifth guy on that roster right now, you have Javonte Williams, you have Darian Porter, and you have Miles Purchase, and now you bring this guy in who has SEC practice reps. I think it's definitely a good spot. Let's go to the last guy, wide receiver from North Dakota State, Eli Green. He has a lot of playing experience. He has over 1,100 yards in his career at North Dakota State. This one, I think it was the second option. I want to say because they went after the Bostic kid. The Bostic kid was the Iowa transfer who committed to Texas A&M. The rumor was he was pretty much committed to Iowa State until Texas A&M threw him a crazy offer just to be their like probably fourth or fifth receiving option. I look at this Eli Green kid. He's got even rush yards to his stats, so he can do a little bit of both. Does this not just automatically scream Dimitri Stanley replacement to you?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, it could be. It kind of seems like he plays a lot of a similar role to what Knoll does for us now, too.
Yep. So where do you think that fits? Like, so right now you have Higgins, you got Knoll, you have Daniel Jackson, you have the Alston kid from Army. I mean, is he just, do you go four wide right now? You kind of have two slot receivers and then you have Alston and Higgins on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, it gives them more options, and especially like we talked about depth, like that is like the biggest thing, especially what Iowa State's could be using the transfer portal for. And we know how we've talked about it on here, how much we're going to be relying on the passing game this upcoming season. So it never hurts to have as many options as you can. And especially we didn't get any more than one slot guy. I mean, outside of Knoll, you could throw them on either side of the field, play them at the same time, give each other breaks. I mean, it never hurts to have talent like that.
100%. And Knoll's, he's not injury prone by any means, but he gets banged up once in a while. And I think it's honestly because last year you relied on him so much. So
yeah,
to have
and
a
he's
second
slider
option,
guy. I mean, never hurts.
Yeah, 100%. I love both of those pickups. We're going to talk about more about the roster in general as we go into this summer, but I feel perfect with where those two additions were from. All right. Speaking of receivers, let's talk about the guy who's going to be throwing to them. But before we get into our Big 12 quarterback tiers, I want to bring you guys our presenting sponsor by our friends at No Rivals Brand. I am rocking the Espresso Texas State hat. It's kind of, I got to rep the brand. I know this is an Iowa State podcast, but they sent us this awesome hat. They sent a North Texas hat to Parks, Oklahoma State hat to Reese, and Stillwater hat to JP. Guys, we got a really big announcement. You can use the promo code PTFS. That's PTFS. Play the fight song, all capital letters in the checkout. It'll get you guys free shipping. And they are going to be releasing some new schools that they work with us here in the future. We're excited to bring you guys that exciting news as we go along. But right now, they're kind of in the heartland as far as hats go. You know, we got to keep supporting them. And guys, if you use that promo code, we can go back to them and say, hey, we need some Iowa State hats. They got Oklahoma, Texas, I think Texas State.
Yeah, they got a lot, like all the Texas schools. They got a K-State one. They got K-State ones too.
They do have K-State. That's what I'm saying. We need some of you guys to use the promo code so we can go to them and say, hey, let's add to the second Farmageddon team. Let's get an Iowa State hat in here. Justin, I want to bring it to you. You just recently got one, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I got the Mississippi State espresso one, kind of like yours, but it's got like the state logo and then the Mississippi on the side. Let's see if I pull it up here. Yeah, I got that one.
Oh, there you go.
Doesn't look super good on there, but
No, that looks
you
great.
can kind of get the gist of it.
He's going to be repping that on our next episode. Really appreciate those guys. They're kind of like us, just trying to build our brands. We have a passion for college sports. We have a passion for college football and the teams that we rep all the time. We don't always just rep Iowa State, Iowa, and Nebraska. So super excited with that partnership. All right. Last thing on the docket tonight. Justin, we're at 17 minutes. We said we were going to go 30, 35 minutes. We will see how long this goes. And we appreciate you guys, as always, tuning in.
Got a lot of tears.
Maybe we drag this out a little bit. Let's see where it takes us from here. We are going to be doing the Big 12 quarterback tiers, how this works. I have 4 groups. Justin has 5. If you just didn't listen to our pod the other night, we broke down the whole country of quarterbacks, broke them into tiers, but this is just Big 12 related. We will explain our tiers. Justin has a different explanation for tier 1 than I do in my own tier 1. So we'll be breaking each other's down. Maybe we have some rebuttals. Maybe we have some discrepancies. Justin, I think we should start with tier 1 because we did that the other night and it was kind of fun because once you get to the lower tiers, then you start really pulling some names. And
I don't have a lot to say about the last tier.
That's when people go, oh my God, I forgot he plays for them or he just transferred there. So let's go tier 1 first. I got Noah Fafita, Cam Rising, Shedeur Sanders. Those are my 3. For the reason I picked those 3, one was experience and just winning pedigree. I think you get that with Cam Rising better than anybody else in the country right now. He's in his 7th year for a reason. Potential talent, like you get it with Shedeur Sanders. I think he's the most talented probably out of this bunch. His draft stock shows it. And then Noah Fafita, I think he's got the talent, but the statistics and the winning to back it up. He had an excellent year last year. He's got one of the best receivers paired up with him in the country in McMillan. And I think that these 3 separate themselves from the rest of the pack. So who you got in tier 1?
Well, this is going to be kind of awkward. I've got the same 3 guys as my tier. I actually went through and ranked mine in order, just something to like spice it up. So this is like my established ones. I've got Shedeur at 1, I've got Rising at 2, and I've got Fafita at 3. I was the one. I think a lot of people, you could look at the mock drafts, you could see what Shedeur does. That's the big name. That's who everybody knows. He's probably gonna be a top 10 pick. I mean, you can look at his stats and look at the rest of that Colorado roster. It kind of speaks for itself. And I actually put Rising above Fafita just based off of like what he's done. I mean, where Utah has been as a program while he's been there has been top tier. And I know he missed like almost all of last season, or was it all of last season? I'm not even sure.
Missed the whole year.
Yeah,
he missed
That's
why he's coming back this year.
Yeah, he missed the whole year. But the last time he played 2 years ago, Utah was damn near. They came off of back-to-back Pac-12 championships and was damn near a playoff contender for both of those. And I still think about that Rose Bowl game that they had against Ohio State, and just that dude can ball. And I mean, it gets kind of annoying seeing guys in college for their 6th or 7th year, but that is an advantage. Like being in college that long, I mean, that's a grown man out there playing ball.
I like the familiar faces. I think college basketball desperately needs it. They need guys like this. I think this is good for the league, and I think it's good for college football. If I had to, is Shedeur 1 just like because of his draft stock, or like what's the reasoning here? I don't see any reason he's ahead of Fafita or Rising, to be completely frank.
I mean, 27 touchdowns last year, 3 interceptions. I know they kind of fell off as the year went on, but I feel like he can kind of do it all.
I think, he's
kind of run. I think he suffered from what a lot of like high tier college quarterbacks have done, where when stuff started to fall around him, he kind of tried to put on that Superman cape, and that's kind of where the mistakes and things started to happen. And they had no O line. We talk about like the problems with Rocco throwing too much last year. Colorado was that, but even on a bigger scale, like people knew what they were doing.
Yeah, I would agree. I just think he's got to. We talked about it the other night. I think he's got to win 8 games to like, if we were going to do this at the end of the year, if he doesn't win 8 games, I'm bumping him down to tier 2. but we'll see
That's
how the
fair.
rest of this
You
list
you
shakes
know
out.
me, I'm Colorado over bet slip guy. So
That's true. That's true. You need it. That makes sense
although
now.
I don't love him and his dad calling out people on Twitter, but I
Or
was
calling him soft or
that almost made me cash out my bet. I'm not gonna
not a
lie.
locker room guy.
Didn't love that, but we're gonna hang in there.
All right. I think the next one is the most interesting. I really do. Uh, for me, in tier two, it's like guys who are, this is I don't want to say it's not a make or break year, but like the ceiling is a Big 12 championship with these quarterbacks. The floor is probably a 6-win season. So with that being said, my tier two, I'll start with our very own Rocco Beck, Jalen Daniels, Avery Johnson, Garrett Green, KJ Jefferson. So that's six. No, sorry. Yeah. No, five. I'm sorry. I got five in tier two.
Yeah. Uh
What
so
do you got?
my tier 2 and my tier 3 are 4 through 10. And I think that production wise, these guys can be very interchangeable and
Mhm.
there's going to be a lot of fluctuation based on team success for this upcoming season. But as far as my tier 2, I titled that one the Offseason Darlings, just kind of like the young guys got a lot of hype. And I've got these in order: number 4, Jalen Daniels; 5, Rocco; 6, Avery Johnson; and 7, Garrett Green.
Okay.
So pretty similar to yours. I just don't have KJ in that list, which I'll be able to explain that a little better in my tier 3. But I think those tier 2 guys, starting with Daniels and Rocco, I mean, Daniels is the most experienced guy out of this group for sure. And just like I said, those offseason darlings, I can't think of a more hyped quarterback who really hasn't done a whole lot, honestly. But
Who's that?
Jalen Daniels.
That's what I see. That's what I said the other night.
But his when he is on the field, the production speaks for itself. But the best ability is availability, and he hasn't really showed it. But if he can play 12 games for this Kansas team, like there's no question they could win the Big 12 next year.
One of the best college football games I think I've watched in like the last 3 or 4 years was 2 years ago, Liberty Bowl between Arkansas and Kansas. That was peak KJ Jefferson, Jalen Daniels going back and forth. I think it ended like 52-49. That's like the peak of what I see those two as. I said it the other night because I think Parks or JP had Jalen Daniels in their tiers for
Yeah.
overall in the country. And I'm with you. For missing last year, it's kind of the same reason why I leave Cam Rising out of it in the country. Availability it's a big deal. The year before he was really good, and I think Kansas won 6 games that year. They went from 3 to 6 or something like that, and then this year they won. What was it? 9 games. They won 9 games with
Yeah.
Jason Bean, basically.
Yeah.
So unfortunately for Daniels, it was more so like, look what Lance Leipold can do with almost any quarterback. Jason Bean, I don't think skipped a step last year when he took over, and I thought Kansas was just as good. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying Jalen Daniels isn't as talented, but there's a reason Lance Leipold's one of the best coaches in all of college football, and we will see. I don't know. I
Kansas
it will
haters.
probably
I've
it will
got him as my
probably come.
fourth quarterback in the Big 12.
He's
I
number
mean,
4 for me.
we need to see more of him. I mean, he's been good, but it hasn't been super consistent, whether that's injuries or anything else. I mean, you've kind of got to see it more. I mean,
Right.
besides Rising and Fafita, we've seen them do it for a full season. Shadur's kind
Yep.
of an exception there, but I can totally see Jalen like being a top 3 quarterback in the Big 12 at the end of the year, but I just can't put him ahead of those other 3 guys right now.
Garrett Green's another guy where I'm like, West Virginia fans are really high on him. If West Virginia was asked to rank him, he'd be number 1 in the country because they're for some
Yeah.
reason they love that guy, and I get why. He plays hard and he just plays like a gritty style at the quarterback position. But I think his like floor ceiling is just like right at 7 wins. I don't think it's going to move up or down much. KJ Jefferson's the interesting one, man, and I don't think he gets talked about enough. People forget how good he was as his first year starter when he was at Arkansas, and they even won. I think it was only 7 games, but man, they played like one of the toughest schedules that year, and he was really really good. And then last but not least, like Avery Johnson could be the best quarterback in this conference next year if he has the year he's supposed to. So the hype is super huge around. I think it's even bigger around Avery Johnson than it is with Jalen Daniels as far as hype's concerned in the entire Big 12. So I'm really, like I said, floor for Kansas State. I could see 7 wins, it's 6 wins. It's the Big 12, man. This happened with Iowa State before, but the ceiling for Kansas State, I could see them getting to 11 wins too. Same thing with KJ. I think 9 to 6 is somewhere where that floor ceiling. And then Rocco, yeah, I think Iowa State's in that same category. I don't really want to go into Rocco a ton because we have plenty of episodes to talk about that, but I think Rocco's where he needs to be, and I think he's an underrated quarterback in college football. Shout out to JP. He had it Rocco as like tier 3 in the country. Did not see that coming.
Which I can totally get on board with. I'll start with my rankings here. I kind of want to start and touching on Avery Johnson because watching that Texas Tech game last year as an Iowa State fan scared the shit out of me. Yeah. Like, really didn't like that at all. But
didn't play in the snow though.
No, he did not
for some reason.
But I think it speaks for itself that the guy that was in front of him transferred to Ohio State of all places. It is probably going to be their starter, and it wasn't even a question. They're like, you're not good enough to play here. Go to Ohio State.
Yep. Well,
kind of speaks to his potential, but we still need to see it as a thrower. We all know how good of a runner he is and how dynamic he can be. Kind of same with Garrett Green. I was
going to say Garrett Green could underratedly be the best scrambler in the conference.
Yeah, but I think it's on a little lesser. I don't think his top end ability is as high as Johnson's. And I've got KJ behind that too, just because like you said how good he was as a freshman, but I really haven't seen him kind of develop since then. And I know it's just been tough being in the SEC and not having near as good of a roster. But I think the high end ability of Johnson and Green, I just kind of like them above that just because there's more potential there, I feel like, that we haven't seen yet. But I do have Rocco above all those guys just because I think he's way more of a pure passer and just a guy you can trust more in big time spots. I mean, I know those other guys haven't really done anything to not trust that, but like we leaned on Rocco so much last year, and he was such the focal point of an offense as a first-year starter. And just the way he takes care of the ball and we know now that we can run an offense through him. I'm really excited to see how he develops and how that goes for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's one of the most accurate throwers in college football. I don't think he's got a huge arm, but I think he's very underrated as far as his accuracy goes. Tier 3. I think this is where the fun begins. So let's get it. Do you want to give your 3 first, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can. So my tier 3, I titled the old heads.
Yeah.
And this is the one where I've got KJ first. So I've got KJ at 8. I've got Alan Bowman at 9, and I've got DeQuan Finn at 10. And those are my 3 guys in there.
Old heads. I like that. That's a good.
I think they're all 23 or older. I don't know how old KJ is.
KJ, he's getting up there, and Cam Rising's the oldest out of all of them. He's like 26.
Yeah, it's true, but he's a little too good to be in tier 3.
Here's what I got for tier 3. These guys, their ceiling, I think, is okay. What I mean by okay is maybe 7, maybe 8 wins with one of these guys, but the floor, it could get ugly. I really think it could get ugly. So in tier 3, I got Alan Bowman, DeQuan Finn out of Baylor, the transfer from Toledo, Baron Morton, the Texas Tech quarterback, took over last year, Sam Levitt, the Michigan State transfer, there's your Arizona State quarterback, and then Josh Hoover, the TCU quarterback as well. Morton and Hoover, those are guys that we saw plenty of last year, but they just kind of stepped into an unfamiliar role. They did all right. I mean, damn, Morton was 7-3 as a starter when Tyler Shuck went down. Josh Hoover was okay at times. His first start against BYU, he threw for like 500 yards. So I think there is potential there with those guys, but they weren't expected to be starters last year. And now they're kind of given the reins. They got some starts under their belt, and we'll see what happens. Like I said, it is the Big 12. Anything can happen in this league. And those are teams that I could see getting 7-8 wins. Texas Tech, the talent's all around Morton too. Like, they have an opportunity to kind of avenge last year. They were one of the dark horses last year. They're kind of back in that role again, and I think they are set up for a pretty good season. But Bowman, I'm just I'm just out on. I was out on Oklahoma State last year. I was kind of proven wrong. I would argue that I
This
kind of
is good.
wasn't. What's good?
I am not very high on Morton, and I think Bowman gets too much hate. You can finish your take on Bowman first.
I mean, we've seen it now. He's his 7th year. It's not like Cam Rising where he's been in a Rose Bowl. He's won conference championships. Yes, he was in a conference title last year. No, it was not because of him. It's because they had one of the best running backs in all of college football. I just don't think. I mean, we've seen him now. This is his 3rd school. He can be serviceable for you, and I just don't think Oklahoma State had any other option right now. It's like a bridge guy, like JP explained the other night. Oklahoma State doesn't have anybody to go to as a backup. Like Gundy his kid was terrible last year. Terrible. And they had to get, so yeah, I think Bowman's fine. You can win 7 games. I don't think they're running it back, and they're not going to be a top 3 team in this conference next year.
Yeah, I just don't understand. Like Oklahoma State to me is like the Miami Heat of like the NBA. I don't understand why we keep sleeping on them.
If that's the case, they're getting their ass kicked this year. People are going to be like, "Oh, watch out for Oklahoma State." No, this is the year they're going to get their ass kicked.
If Ollie Gordon, i.e. Jimmy Butler, doesn't play, you're correct. But I don't know. They were obviously started off the season really rough last year, and I know that's because Gordon didn't really start getting the lion's share of carries until about the 3rd or 4th game. But that's also because they were playing kind of musical chairs with quarterback too. And once they turned to Bowman and had that stability with him, if anything, yeah, he was the stability force of a Big 12 championship team. I mean, that's got to be worth something. It's not like I'm talking about him as like
Ollie Gordon,
a top 2-tier guy.
Ollie Gordon literally rushed for like 250 yards in 3 different games.
Ollie Gordon's really good. I know.
I don't even have to look it up. I'm sure he rushed for more yards than Bowman had passing in all of those games, which doesn't happen in the modern day of this football era.
Yes, but Bowman's definitely not losing them games. And I just like we said, that experience is annoying, especially at this point, but it still kind of matters. Like that's a big stability factor for one of the longest tenured coaches in college football. And I don't see them losing a lot of games like that when they've got an experienced quarterback, an experienced coach, and such a good running back. I mean, we're talking quarterbacks right now, but
yeah,
it's just kind of to the point where I just kind of trust the guy.
Fair enough. Let's break down the last 2 for me. Sam Levitt, I know nothing about. Just gonna be frank. I don't like Parks loves him. He played at Michigan State. I don't know if he was the starter last year. The over-under win total for Arizona State is 4.5. Like the Kim kid played a bunch, I know, at Michigan State. So I don't even know, like, where's the talent come from this kid? Jeff Sims transferred there. Maybe we're going to see a little bit of Jeff Sims this year at Arizona State. I just don't think Dillingham's going to have another tough year, especially moving to this league. I think that's one of the teams that's kind of going to get beat on. And I have no idea what to expect with that quarterback, but he's young. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. DeQuan Finn, also new to this, was a starter at Toledo the last 3 years. He rushed for over 1,800 yards at Toledo. 1,800 yards as a quarterback, threw for over 7,000. I think the talent is there. It's just how fast can he get used to the Big 12? That's the question for me. And honestly, for Baylor, it's a do or die year for Dave Aranda. We'll talk about coaches, I'm sure, in another episode, but it's do or die for Dave Aranda.
Toledo was a really good team last year. I know, obviously, the MAC's nothing like the Big 12, but I mean, the Big 12 had their fair share of problems with the MAC last year.
Iowa State did lose to Ohio, so
I know, and I
can't say too much.
I'm still not totally out on Aranda as a coach too. I think he's still a pretty good coach. He's in the Big 12 championship 2 years ago. That could be a pretty sneaky pairing.
That's a good intro to our last tier, tier 4. Man, I don't want to be well. You have 5, so
I do. Yeah, my tier 4. So we had the old heads, and that was the end was DeQuan Finn. My tier 4 is long shots, and I've got Josh Hoover with TCU, and then I've got Donovan Smith at 12, and then I've got Morton at 13. That's kind of what I was saying. I wasn't as high on Morton because we kind of talked about how Texas Tech kind of fell short last year, and I don't lay it all on the feet of a first-time quarterback. But, like, he really wasn't that impressive to me.
No,
And
not towards the end of the
Hoover,
year.
yeah, Hoover wasn't very good either. But the reason I had him at the top of that tier is I was kind of surprised when he took over as the starter, because I thought who was who was the
Chandler
guy in front of
Morris.
him? Yeah, because Chandler
He
Morris
was
the
the
year
starter for
before
Duggan.
was gonna bench Duggan. So like
Yep.
I thought Chandler was gonna be pretty good, and the fact that Hoover came in and overtook him. Obviously, TCU had their struggles last year, but he was still a fine quarterback. Like, wouldn't surprise me if TCU turned it around this year, especially even with him at quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't love what they did in the portal, but they brought in a kid from Boise State that had over 800 yards for them. So, I mean, we'll see. I think they're around the 6 or 7 win mark again. Definitely, probably not going to make a national championship run. This
No,
tier for me, tier 4, I have like last hope would probably be a good title for this. I'm
my
sorry if your
my
quarterback.
my last tiers are called the diehards, because if you're not a college football diehard, you're not going to know who these guys are.
You mentioned the Baylor championship 3 damn years ago. Let's start there. Gary Bohannon, the transfer from Baylor, USF, and now BYU's starting quarterback. They still have the Retzloff kid. He played in the Iowa State game. The JUCO kid, he can throw it around the yard. I wouldn't be surprised if they go to him at some point during the year, because I don't see BYU just winning a bunch of games with Gary Bohannon. That's just my opinion. Donovan Smith, man, another guy I've seen just way too many times. His glory was throwing a Hail Mary against West Virginia last year. He also threw for 88 yards against Kansas State. I'm sorry. Willie Fritz is bringing in a bunch of guys from Tulane. I don't love his first year in this league. I think they're still going to struggle, and they lost a lot. They lost Matthew Golden and Sam Brown, both 2 of their top receivers. So, no, I don't love Donovan Smith in this situation. Last but not least, Brandon Sorsby. You don't know who that is? He was a starter at Northwestern for a few games, and now he has moved on to Cincinnati. And that
He
is
didn't
another
make my
team.
list.
Who did you have as the Cincinnati starting quarterback?
I had the guy they played at the end of last year, Lynchburg.
Yeah, I mean they could. That's
Yeah,
why.
I don't
That's
know.
where.
Well, that's
That's
that's same thing with BYU. I didn't even have Bohannon on my list. I had Retzloff.
okay.
So
So that's where if you're not sure who your starting quarterback is heading into the month of June, that's kind of where you know where you stand going into the 2024 season. Yeah, that's where like all 4 of these guys. I think BYU's win totals at 5, Houston's at 4.5, Cincinnati I know is at 4.5.
yeah,
So that's I mean, can any of these guys get 6 wins? I doubt it. I'm sorry. That's kind of where that's where the last hope comes in.
yeah,
You
I'd be pretty surprised. Yeah, once we got to once we got to this part of the list, it was pretty tough sledding for me to even find who I thought the starter was going to be. But the fact that it took, because I've got them listed here, like I said, the fact that it took for us to get to about 13, 14, 15, 16, that means 12 of these teams already have a pretty good idea who their starter is. And barring injury, at least 10 of those guys are going to play all year. I
Yep.
mean, that kind of speaks to the depth of the Big 12 and how much of a, for the lack of a better word, shit show it could be this year,
Yeah.
because all
It
these teams
always
are going to be
is.
really even, and we don't know how some of this stuff's going to turn out.
Yep. My last thing on Bohannon and Smith, guys that have been around the block. Donovan Smith gets hurt a lot. He threw for 2,000 yards last year, but just really wasn't that impressive. Bohannon got benched at USF, and they ended up winning 7 games for the first time in like 5 years. He got hurt before that Big 12 title game. Shapen comes in. The rest was kind of history there until Blake Shapen left town to go to Mississippi State. So the circle of life revolves around the Big 12 in the quarterback department. Justin, that was fun. We got a little sick there at the end with some of those guys. You got any more closing thoughts before we head out of here and we touch base probably sometime in June?
Not really. Not a whole lot going on in the city of Ames right now. I mean, all the students just left. So as summer ball approaches, I mean, everything's kind of quiet, but I think that's kind of a good thing for this Iowa State team. My tier 2 was called the Offseason Darlings, because I know that Rocco Beck's starting to get kind of that hype, and
Yeah,
Iowa
that's a good.
State's one of those teams that's starting to get some of that hype, and I don't really want it. I want it to stay a quiet off season, and hopefully
Mhm.
that allows for us to kind of have more fun topics like this, and that the team can kind of go on under the radar and build itself up better with the guys that we got, I guess, instead of trying to rebuild something new.
I think that's going to be a good episode topic before we start the season. Expectations for this Iowa State football team. Like, what's the floor? What's the ceiling? We'll get into all that, what you can expect, what you should expect. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, give us a follow, subscribe at the bottom if you're here as an Iowa State fan, or if you're just here as a college football fan in general. We got you for everything. Watch our live shows every Tuesday night. You can find us on all your socials at Play the Fight Pod. Follow me on my new Twitter. I'm going to be trying to do some college football stuff there, just giving us a little personality. And I know Parks made one as well, but my name is Jay Schaefer, CFB. Give us a follow on all social media platforms. We appreciate you guys, as always, tuning in at the end of May. You guys are sickos just like us, and we couldn't do this without you. Until then, till next time, we'll probably touch base again in June. And if then, and always then, go Cyclones.